What should you focus on? Building your net worth or building your cash flow? Making it rain.
Enjoy the episode.
Take care.
Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast, where we teach clients how to build wealth and create passive income without the risk of Wall Street.
Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso. And today we're going to be talking about what people are focusing on. Should you be focusing on your net worth or your cash flow? Anthony, what has been your experience over the years, good or bad?
I would say most people are focused on building their net worth. However, but I do believe that as we've been working with them and we kind of talk about the difference between, building up a net worth and actually having cash flow that you can use, right? But typically a lot of our clients have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And our goals are to create more passive income than our monthly expenses. So in order to do that, we need to create some cash flow. So I think a lot of clients are a little bit confused at the beginning, but hopefully we can shed some light. What about you, Cam?
You use the word confused. I think they've been conditioned to focus on net worth. And actually, we were talking before this podcast, and I remembered a commercial. Do you remember this commercial way back when? I think it was by ING, but it was
I think I know what you're talking about.
It was a bunch of people walking around and they're holding their number, right? It's like, what's your number, right? And it was some guy walking around with a briefcase, and his number was like 3.8 million and some change. And then it went to another woman that's walking in a business suit. Her number was 2.6. And even today, this was commercials from years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember at the end of that video, there was a family. There was a guy like sitting next to his wife, and I think she was in labor or something. But his number was like 1 million, like 1.1, something like that. And even way back then, I'm like, 1 million is not going to be enough. Right. And that's probably 15, maybe 20 years ago now. And today, 1 million is certainly not going to be enough. Right. If that's your number and that's what you're going off of. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about changing your focus, why focusing on net worth is wrong, and why you should be focusing on cash flow.
In order to do that, Cam, before we dive deeper, let's define them. Okay. So, Cameron, how would you define net worth?
Yeah. Your net worth is just the total value of your assets minus any outstanding liabilities. One of the easiest examples for you CPA types would be if I went and I owned $1 million house and I owed $800,000 on that house. So what you would do is you'd minus the liability from the total value. And so my net worth in that asset would be $200,000 positive.
Okay.
So that's often what the net worth is. Oftentimes we'll work with clients, young people, and they have a negative net worth.
Yeah.
Right?
Student loans
is something like that, right? They owe more than what they've actually acquired up until that point. So,
okay. So that's net worth. Now, how would you define cash flow?
Yeah, cash flow is money that is received on a continual basis from assets that you own. So a few examples of those would be like rental income, right, from a property, maybe draws from a business, right, or maybe dividends from a stock, or even potentially distributions from some sort of investment accounts. And also, most often with some older people, is they've got some cash flow from annuities that they purchased over the years. Yep.
Now, if you notice, we're calling this cash flow as opposed to income, which is what most people might consider. But again, Cameron, as one thing that you often say is how important words are, right? And income is referring to profits, right? The income or the profit you made from an asset, which most profits are going to be taxable, right? However, but there's other sources of cash flow that are not from income and thus may not be taxable. A couple examples would be, first of all, loans and withdrawals from a life insurance policy. Also a reverse mortgage. Now, a reverse mortgage is really, and there's even, you need to be, I don't know the age, but in your 60s. And for most of our clients, that's probably not something that they're considering, right? But most of our clients may have parents who might need some financial assistance. And if our parents need financial assistance, who's going to end up helping them out?
That's us.
It's going to be the kid. So we don't talk much about reverse mortgages, but I just do want to say that there is a place for them. It's not the first place that we would look for, but oftentimes some people, the only assets they have are tied up in the equity of the house. And this is a way to turn that equity into cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And another form of cash flow is proceeds from a sale of the business, because maybe something like that asset would be part of his return to principal, so it's not all taxable, but the profit would be.
Good points, Anthony. Thanks for adding that. But so now that we kind of have definitions on each of these, which one is more important?
You know, Cameron, you're going to love this because I'm going to answer this with a story.
Oh, parable.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow,
Parable.
Jesus, thank you.
Okay. If we look at this from the surface, I have a client. She was in her mid 60s, net worth $2 million,
Okay.
pension $70,000 a year,
Okay.
and she was getting Social Security of $20,000 a year.
Okay.
So, Cam, just based on that, what's your impression of where she is financially?
I would say she's in a good position, much better off than most people.
Yeah, you might say, well, maybe she doesn't have to worry about money. She's got 90 grand coming in.
Yeah.
Right. And she's got $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's what you thought, Cameron, you would be wrong once again. Right. Because it's not, we got to look a little deeper into the numbers. And first, if we look at that, pension is taxable. Her Social Security is taxable. So those sources of income are, a big chunk of it is going to the IRS and the state.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the 24% tax bracket, and she has the privilege of paying state income tax, which is about another 5%. So for ease, I'm just going to round that to 30%. In essence, goes straight to the government. Now, but let's look at her net worth. Right, $2 million sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah,
I mean, and it is a lot of money. I think a lot of people would love to have a net worth of $2 million. But when we look at it, $1 million or half of that is tied up in raw land. Now, Cameron, how much cash flow does raw land provide?
That is a goose egg. That'd be zero.
Yeah. If anything, it's negative because we still have property tax on it. And, you know, a little backstory. This was land that was inherited by multiple generations. Then what would happen is they give it to the kids, and then one of the kids would get divorced. So then that would split it. And then the kids, then the grandkids would get it. So they own this land, but it's so many different shares of people. Like it just very convoluted. Right. So it's
word for you.
And it is. Okay. But the bottom line is it's not producing cash flow. Now, of the other $1 million she has, 750,000 of that is inside an IRA. Once we and again, a lot of times people think where they look at that number, I have $750,000, but we have to remember the money's not yours. Part of that needs to go to the IRS. And at 30%, that really cuts it down to $525,000. Okay. So here's what I thought was really interesting. So we have that 525 that we can turn that into cash flow. But the problem is that since it's invested in the market, which means it's very volatile. So we have to be very careful how much we take out each year to ensure we have enough for the rest of our lives. So the financial industry tried to solve this problem, and you might have heard of the 4% rule, meaning you could comfortably take out 4% of the assets. But here's what's interesting, Cameron. What is 30% of, I'm sorry. So if we take, what's 4%, Cameron, of 525?
That would be just over 20,000.
Okay. Let's round it to 21.
Okay.
Okay. Now, but also, as I'd mentioned earlier, that pension is taxable. Now, Cameron, what is, this one will be easier for you. What's 30% times 70,000?
21,000.
21,000, which is the same amount of money it will be taking out of her IRA. So at the end of the day, this IRA with $250,000 will all end up in the hands of the IRS.
Ouch.
So back to the question, Cameron, what's more important, net worth or cash flow? What do you think she would say?
Now she's going to say cash flow.
Right? Cash flow. And because here's the deal. At the end of the day, I mean, we're saving up money so we can have and live in an abundant retirement. But in order to do so, we need to make sacrifices now, right? We need to live under our means, and maybe we're missing out on some opportunities, or we're sacrificing our time to maybe work harder, or to manage these investments. Okay. But at the end of the day, we need to turn those assets into cash, because that's how we're going to buy or live that abundant lifestyle, right? If we want to travel, we want to spoil the grandkids. We want to pay for top-notch medical care. We want to pay for food. We can't do that with raw land. We can't barter, right, that raw land for some medicine. We have to convert those assets into cash. So at the end of the day, we need that money to be in cash. And ideally, we're looking for cash flow. And my whole thing is, if the ultimate strategy is to have that cash flow in retirement, why don't we start creating that cash flow now? Why don't we start looking at assets and start learning how we can turn our assets into cash flow, so we can live off that cash flow? And maybe ideally, we never touch the principal of these assets, which again, we can pass down to the next generation. But I will get off of my pedestal there.
Yeah, that was a good soapbox rant, man. You're going.
So Cam, let me ask you this. Why do you think most people focus on net worth and not cash flow?
I think most people focus on net worth versus cash flow, again, because that's what they have been conditioned to look at, right? I mean, every time you fill out some sort of financial questionnaire, it's one of the leading questions that's on there is, what is your net worth, right? And again, I think there's a lack of education in the financial space. And so, to say it bluntly, is people just don't know any better.
Yeah, totally agree.
No one's educated. No one knows kind of what that is. So it's just kind of intangible metric that we use to kind of put a value on some sort of asset that an individual owns. So yeah, that's what I'd say. My 2 cents would be that. What about you?
Well, I'd also add that looking back in history, I mean, the 401ks haven't always been around. And before that, there was typically pensions, right? So the employer was setting aside money for you. But when they got rid of those and they put the burden or the obligation of saving from the employer to the employee. So I think that's why the employees need to start thinking about managing their money. And most of the time they're going to, say, a typical financial planner.
Yeah.
And those typical financial planners, they're not talking about cash flow.
No.
They're talking about getting assets under management, of building up the net worth. So that's what they're hearing from the financial planners.
Yeah.
And I'd also say that if we focus on cash flow, it's going to take some effort, right? It's not as easy just to be very passive and just have your financial planner do it. You need to take an active role, and it's going to take a little bit of effort. And so that's something maybe most people are not used to doing. But I'm hoping during this recession that we're in, and I'm hearing I have a couple of clients that I just say are in between jobs,
Mm.
right? And I'm telling them, hey, during this time, let's take some of that time that we were using to make somebody else wealthy. Maybe let's start spending some of that time to make ourselves wealthy and start creating that cash flow and that passive income.
Great point. Just in regards to the effort piece, uh, this idea that it takes effort, right? That's the thought that I had when I was thinking of kind of net worth. Net worth, or like kind of that traditional model of putting money away and hoping that you hit your quote unquote number, right? Is, man, it's all hope. It's all speculation. It's like, man, I'm hoping that A, B, and C work out for me, right? I hope the market doesn't take a crash the year before I'm ready to retire. I hope interest rates stay low. I hope home values stay high so I can downsize at the right time. So there's a lot of this hope that is in that business model or that kind of strategy, where when you're focusing on cash flow, man, it's your responsibility, right? So you have the responsibility to go out there and find an opportunity to create, right, some sort of value that will then generate some income for you. And what I've found, right, working with clients over the years is that, man, if you point somebody in that right direction or open their eyes to an opportunity where they can kind of get their hands dirty and create value that creates an income stream, man, they're going to take that and they're going to go run it, right? And they will generate as much as they can for themselves. And it's a completely different mindset. And one thing I'll share with you guys is that I don't know if you guys have ever sat across from somebody. I know we have advisors that listen, Anthony, but Anthony, think back to the times that you've met with somebody that's close to retirement and is in that kind of traditional model where, man, they're just hoping and praying, right? They're sitting there and like, man, I hope all this stuff works out. And then when you kind of show them some opportunities that they can start to take control of their money, there's just this complete shift in their demeanor and in their point of view looking forward, as they have now control over what they can do, the outcome that's going to happen. And man, right, you can see just the stress, right, just go away, right, from the moment when they realize, man, this thing's up to me. And so that's kind of the biggest difference that I kind of saw between net worth versus cash flow. Net worth is, man, something far away and intangible, but man, if you focus in on cash flow, you're getting busy and you're getting working right now today. So in regards to taking effort.
Yeah, I mean, let's not I mean, your net worth is an important number, but it shouldn't be the number, right? If we focus on buying assets, we will naturally build up that net worth, and particularly if we stay away from buying liabilities, that will help the net worth at all as well. Now, Cameron, if someone wants to focus on cash flow as opposed to net worth, what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah. Recommend first thing, what you want to do is you want to get educated, right? So if you're going to start to focus on cash flow, there's a ton of opportunities out there that you can tap into as far as ways to create cash flow. The second one, Anthony's grabbing the book now, but man, you got to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Thanks. Again, it's going to start with mindset. So education, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is going to get your mind right and allow you to identify what quadrant you're in and then which one you want to be in. Right. And then also you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. If there's one thing that you could do, it's getting in community with other people that think the same way, is because as you go down this road, a lot of times you're going to feel like a lone wolf. Like, man, am I the only one that's thinking this way? And you need those people there to kind of support you and reinforce that, hey, we're going in the right direction. The other one that I would think of is to set a goal, right? Is I met with someone earlier today, and they had, kind of a lump sum of cash. And the question I asked them is, what do you want this to do for you? Right? I want to turn this into income. Well, how much income do you want it to turn into? I don't know. Right. Okay. Well, let's, right. Well, like what number do we need to get to? So, right. Monthly expenses that's one number, but we also need to exceed that, right? We're not in this thing to just get the bare minimum. So not only do we need to meet monthly expenses, but we need to exceed that. So take some time and think about that.
And what I would say on that goal is, I mean, yeah, the ultimate goal is, your monthly expenses, but we got to start somewhere, right? Oftentimes that number may take a while to reach, but let's set maybe, hey, I want to make enough passive income to make my car payment.
Yeah.
Right. Then, all right, I want to make enough passive income to make my mortgage payment. And then you can just slowly achieve those goals. And then you can eventually get to where your passive income is bigger than your monthly expenses, or we like to say that I want my pie to be bigger than me.
Yeah. Once you set those goals in place, is you got to put those into effect by taking some action, right? Is you got to take a step forward. Like Anthony said, sometimes those big goals can be overwhelming. If you break it up into smaller ones, it's easier to take that little first step, making it a baby step. Outside of that is you got to store your capital, store your cash in somewhere that's conducive to creating cash flow. Almost every retirement program that's out there does not allow for that. And so if you're in those accounts, you need to rethink kind of where you're keeping your money and start with the end in mind. Like, what's your goal, right? A lot of times people end up in those types of accounts just through default, right? They're just looking for the short-term tax advantage, but long-term big picture, if our intention is to create cash flow, right, we have yet to find a better place than a properly designed whole life policy.
Cameron, on that, I would say it's very important to have your money in a place where you can create that cash flow. Because a prime example, oftentimes people have a lot of their wealth inside their IRA or 401k. Then they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, they hear a podcast or hear about passive income. They want to buy a property, but all of their money is locked away inside an IRA. So it is possible that you can buy real estate inside your IRA. However, we highly discourage that. And in fact, we did a podcast specifically on that, where we actually took some numbers of taking the money out of your IRA, paying the tax, paying the penalty, and buying assets. And when you look at the tax advantages and to be able to create that cash flow that you can use, it makes a lot of sense sometimes to take the money out of your IRA to buy those assets. But we will put a link in the show notes to that podcast episode.
Yeah, great point. Other thing you want to do is you want to buy real assets, right? Is you want to buy assets that create cash flow. If you haven't read Robert Kiyosaki's other book, Fake, right, make sure you grab that, where he talks about fake assets, fake teachers. He talks about fake money. Really, really good read. But where we recommend someone invest in is buying a business, and then also real estate, right? Hard, tangible assets. The cash flow that comes off of those is you want to use that cash flow to create additional cash flow for you, right? So you got to replenish your capital and turn it over again. This is the whole idea of velocity of money. You put money out in the market, you got to turn around and get it back. The quicker you can do that, the more cash flow that you're going to be able to create. And then also, last thing is, during this time when you're kind of building this, bring your kids in.
Good point.
Have a conversation with them, right? Show them what you're doing, expose them to them really young. A lot of times, I don't think we give kids the benefit of the doubt as to how smart they really are. A lot of times we think that things may go over their heads, but man, you know what? Kids are watching. They're going to pick up on what you do. The sooner they're learning this jargon and this business model, the better off they're going to be.
Well said, Cam.
Thanks.
I'm going to add one more piece in there that you forgot to add.
Oh, well, yeah, I figured you would. Yeah.
If you want to learn how to focus more on cash flow versus net worth, get on a discovery call with us. And we can kind of give you some ideas, maybe give you some resources. Maybe infinite banking's for you, maybe it's not. But let's get on a call and kind of chat and see how and if we can help you create that passive income to be more than your monthly expenses.
Well said. Great point. Finally. Well done.
Go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. Also, check out our website, infinitewealthconsultants.com, to find our podcast along with other additional resources.